It all started when Akira Tsubaki's class had a new transfer student, Mikito Yarabi. The moment she stepped into the room, instantly seemed to already exude a certain level of oddness with her jerky movements and her bangs covering half of her face. She was assigned to sit next to him, and Tsubaki did his best to be accommodating, offering his help if she needed any. However, from the very first day, Yarabi was labeled as a weirdo. When lunchtime came, she immediately fell asleep face first on her desk. When a bunch of girls approached her to get to know her, she refused and promptly fell asleep again. Her strange behavior escalated during math period when she, out of nowhere, began laughing hysterically, claiming that it was because of something personal she can't explain. Her excuse only infuriated their teacher more. From then on, the fact that she is always asleep during breaks and that she's not really close to anyone, she gained quite a reputation as a weirdo. Little did Tsubaki know that everything would change in a single day. It was dismissal time when he noticed that Yarabi was the last person remaining in the classroom, so he woke her up. When she lifted her head up, he noticed that she was drooling, and her saliva was pooling onto her desk. He explained that it was time to go home, and so she stood up to leave. Before she could completely go, he called her attention to tell her that she still had some drool on her chin, so she wiped it up before she left. He turned back around and focused back on the pool of drool that was on the table. He allowed his intrusive thoughts to take over, and he gathered some of the saliva on his fingers and took a taste. As he was sucking on his finger, he noted that Yarabi's saliva was quite sweet. That was when he realized what exactly he was doing, and he was instantly horrified. He escaped from that room as fast as he could. At night, he dreamt about a girl who was holding his hand as they ran into a strange city. There, they danced on a roof of a hotel, clearly having a time of their lives. That girl is actually Yarabi. Since then, that dream had been in his mind for days. Several days later, Tsubaki suddenly collapsed. He had a cold and his fever was so severe that he had to stay home for days. His sister was perplexed that even though the doctor said that it was just a simple cold, his fever was still quite high. While he was still stuck in bed, his sister informed him that one of his classmates had brought him some handouts from school. However, he did not expect that classmate to be Yarabi. When she entered his room, he instantly shot up from his position out of shock. She did not even bring handouts as she had said. She made herself comfortable on his bed, and in an ominous manner, she called his name and proceeded to explain how his sickness is not an ordinary cold. He was given the shock of his life when she told him that she knew where he got it. Somehow, she knew that he licked her drool from her desk 2 weeks ago. When he did not say a word out of astonishment, she raised her hand to lower the face mask he was wearing. She ordered him to open his mouth. When he did, she raised her finger to her mouth and coated it with her saliva. She then stuck her finger in his mouth and told him to suck it. When she retracted her hand, he felt that he was feeling relatively better. His fever was gone like magic. She explained that since it was so long since he had tasted her saliva, he was going through withdrawal. The reason why he was so ill, he could not believe what he had just heard. He needed answers, so he asked her if her saliva had some chemicals or bacteria that made him addicted to it. Rather than giving him more information, she laughed at him so hard that his room shook with it. When she was done with her cackling, she explained that he was lovesick. She speculated that the moment he saw her eyes when he woke her up that faithful afternoon, he fell in love with her. And that was the reason why he reacted the way he did from tasting her drool. After giving him such life-altering information, she reminded him to go to school tomorrow and left his room. He did go to school the following day. When school ended, he was unprepared to have Yarabi waiting for him. She wanted them to walk home together. When they were about to part ways, she coated her finger with her saliva once again and ordered him to lick it. He was obviously hesitating to do so, but she warned him that he may go into withdrawal again if he didn't, so he had no choice but to comply. And that became their daily routine after school. At some point, he indeed fell in love with her. So after one of their after-school routines, he gathered as much courage as he could and confessed that he loved her, and asked her to go out with him. But she wanted him to prove it to her. He thought about kissing her, but she stopped him. She told him that she wanted something original, something only he can think of. He suddenly took out a photo from his wallet, claiming that it was a girl that he had a crush on for so long. He confesses that the moment he licked her drool, he forgot that he even had that crush. So to demonstrate his devotion to her, he ripped it up to pieces and threw it away. He declared that from then on, she is now his girlfriend. Suddenly, her mouth began overflowing with saliva, pooling onto the ground. She explained that it's what happens whenever she's happy. She then asked him if he was a virgin. When he confirmed that he was, she was relieved that they were the same. She then revealed that back then, when she suddenly laughed during class, she actually heard a voice. It was telling her that Tsubaki was the person she would be having sex with for the first time. Naturally, he was astounded to hear this. He could only watch her as she made her way home. Before completely leaving, she called out to him that she was now his girlfriend. They were at school when Tsubaki decided to ask his friend Oino's opinion. He asked for advice on what to do if he hypothetically had a girlfriend. His friend contemplated for a short moment and told him that they should probably hold hands. Tsubaki thought that this idea was brilliant, so when he and Yurabi were walking back home, he tried to hold her hand. However, she jerked her hand away. When he explained his intention, she told him that there was no reason for them to hold hands. Tsubaki lamented that other than when Yurabi lets him swallow her drool every day before they part, there was no indication that they were even in a relationship whatsoever. So he sought Yuno's advice once again, and this time he told him that prior to holding hands, they must communicate first. They should talk about each other's hobbies and stuff. So he tried again to be closer to his girlfriend. Before they parted ways that day, he asked her if they could talk a little. She seemed confused, so he asked what she would like to do. Her answer surprised him though. She answered that she was good with scissors. To demonstrate this, she made him hold a piece of cloth. She then took out a pair of scissors from her panties. With lightning speed, she used the scissors to make a camellia flower, since that was what his name meant. He was pretty worried that she was flashing her underwear to a guy. However, she told him that she was okay with it as long as it was him. When she left, he figured that he could consider that as communication. Later on, he had to seek Yuno's not-so-expert advice again. He wanted to know what actually came way before communication and holding hands. Yuno, after a moment of speculation about whether or not Tsubaki actually had a girlfriend, answered that the greeting came first. He recalled that he did greet Yurabi the first time they met fairly well. However, despite all his efforts thinking about it, he was still unable to understand her. An opportunity arose when his friend gave him 2 tickets for the movie he had been wanting to watch. He considered this as an opportunity for Yurabi and him to be more like a couple. When he told Yurabi about watching it on Sunday, she told him that she had already had plans for that day. This was a blow to him, and hearing this caused him to crouch down in devastation. He asked her if he really is her boyfriend since they didn't really do anything that couples usually do. She told him that he is her boyfriend, and that his sucking on her saliva-covered finger every afternoon was a bond of their own. To prove this to him, she led him up to a temple and into an abandoned building. When they reached the creepy rooftop with broken glass and scattered wood, she made him sit on a chair. She then made him promise to keep his eyes shut until she told him to open them. She then told him that she will stick her drool-covered finger in his mouth, but this was a special drool, so he must prepare himself. When she did, there was an inexplicable increase in his heartbeat. His body felt like it was on fire, and he was so aroused for no reason. His nose even started bleeding. Meanwhile, Yurabi was suddenly wholly naked. Her clothes are haphazardly scattered all over the floor. She explained that he was feeling that way because she passed on her excitement to him through her drool, and this was only possible because he was her boyfriend. When she redressed herself, she wiped the blood from his nose and led him home. As they were walking, she told him that her heart was pounding too, in case he did not keep his promise. When he asked her what she would have done if he did not, she instantly got her scissors from her panties and aimed them at him. He was quick to use his notebook as a shield, and she used her skills to make paper people out of it as a demonstration of what she would have done to him. Good thing he honored his promise to her. That night, he had another crazy dream where he actually did the deed with Yurabi. The next day, as they were walking, Yurabi noticed him blushing. So she asked him about it, and he told her that he just remembered a dream he had. Yurabi wanted to know what it was about, but he told her it was a secret. Out of nowhere, she brought her finger into his mouth, and with her finger coated with his saliva, she sucked on it. Her nose suddenly started bleeding. Turns out, she somehow knew what he dreamt about. He was stupefied to hear this and demanded to know how she did that. But rather than answering him, she declared that it was a secret and proceeded to run away from him. Tsubaki was unable to go home with Yurabi because of day duty. When he went to a classroom, he accidentally saw his friend Yuno kissing a girl. He was so shocked, and when they noticed him by the door, they instantly separated. Apparently, Yuno and the girl, Oka, were together since the first year. They were keeping it a secret, so Yuno made him swear to tell no one about what he had witnessed. During class, he couldn't help but notice the similarities Yurabi and he had with Yuno and Oka. Like them, nobody actually knew that they were dating. The only difference was that the two were already kissing, whilst Yurabi and him are nowhere near that level. He couldn't help but start obsessing about the act of kissing. On their way home, Yurabi wanted to stop at the park. She intended to do her homework beforehand, so Tsubaki decided to do his as well. While both of them were busy, he told her about Yuno and Oka kissing when he walked in on them. At first, he was disappointed when she did not react much to him broaching such an intimate topic. He was down for a moment when all of a sudden, She asked him if he wanted to kiss her. When he confessed that he did, she took out a test tube from her bag. She asked him to hold it, and she stood up to twirl fast for several seconds. She asked for the test tube back and held it to her mouth. Letting her saliva drip into it, she then instructed him to taste it before sleeping that night. He was dumbfounded, of course, but what did it have to do with kissing? But as usual, he did as he was told. He tasted the drool when he was alone in his room that night. That night, he dreamt that he was walking side by side with Urabi. He watched her pop a piece of sweets into her mouth, and she noticed him observing her, so she offered him sweets as well. But rather than giving him a new piece like a normal person, she came up to him and planted her mouth to his, effectively transferring the candy to his mouth and popping another one into her own mouth. Naturally, Tsubaki was flabbergasted. She explained that since he was envious of Yuno kissing his girlfriend, they now have had a first kiss together. He became upset about this, passionately saying that first kisses ought to have feelings. The next day, as they were walking home once again, he told her about the weird dream he had had after tasting the drool from the test tube. She then asked him to come with her to the woods. There, she asked him if he wanted to kiss. Tsubaki instantly turned red, and he took several moments before he could answer. He then told her that they should wait until they truly understand each other's feelings before doing such a thing. He then looked up into his eyes and blushed, stating that she agreed as well. The next time they were in school, Tsubaki was thinking about how exactly they could understand each other. However, as the class was cleaning the classroom, he noticed one of his classmates looking at Urabi with interest. He even followed her when she went to take out the trash. Later on, when he was getting his daily drool, she had told him that Ogata, their classmate, asked her out. He was surprised by this and got incredibly annoyed. He learns that she told him that she will give her reply the following day, so he was determined to inform Ogata that she is his girlfriend. However, she told him not to interfere, and that this was her problem. That night, he was so frustrated that Urabi didn't just reject the guy since he was already her boyfriend. He began overthinking that she was probably choosing between the two of them, especially since Ogata was pretty popular for being on the soccer team. Next day, during lunch break, he watched as Urabi walked out of the classroom with Ogata trailing behind her. He was so infuriated that he forcefully took Oino's lunch and gobbled it up. Meanwhile, Ogata asked Urabi about her response, and she told him to close his eyes instead. He was confused for a bit, but he did it anyway. She then covered her finger with saliva and shoved it in Ogata's mouth. He was startled and asked her what she had just done. But rather than answering, she asked him if he felt anything different instead. Ogata denied that anything had changed. She then told him that he can never be her boyfriend. She walked away with a knowing smile, leaving the poor guy perplexed. Later on, she informed Tsubaki about how she rejected Ogata. He was so relieved, and he expressed how he was worried she was choosing between the two of them. Hearing this, Urabi asked him to open his mouth, and he did so without question. She shoved her saliva-covered fingers in his mouth, and after a few seconds, Tsubaki's nose started bleeding. Tsubaki panicked and asked why it was happening. She handed him the underwear she was supposed to wear that day and said that she wasn't wearing any. He was taken aback and listened as she explained that he was the only boy she had a bond with, since Ogata did not react the same way he did. He became overwhelmed when she declared that he was her boyfriend. He attempted to hug her, but she evaded him and was about to take out her scissors only to remember that she was not wearing underwear. He simply took the scissors from her bag and gently tapped his head with them, reminding him not to grab her like that again. To Tsubaki's joy, she held his hand when they continued walking. Tsubaki noticed that Oino was smiling too much, so he wanted to find out what he was so happy about. His friend tells him that the reason he was more happy than usual was because he finally got to see his girlfriend in her summer PE uniform. His conversation with him made him start to think about Urabi in just a tight shirt and shorts as well. He was clearly ecstatic about it as well. All of a sudden, he noticed that someone had approached his sleeping girlfriend. Oka, Oino's girlfriend, asked Urabi to have lunch with her. Urabi agreed as long as she does not wake her up again, since she never eats lunch. However, when she smelled how good Oka's lunch was, she woke up once again. Oka offered that she try the food since she had a knack for cooking. Tsubaki and Oino were astonished as they watched their girlfriends interact. The rest of the class was also shocked to see the reclusive Urabi sharing food with Oka. When they were walking home, Tsubaki told Urabi that he was happy that she shared a meal with Oka, especially since she's always alone at school without any friends. She told him that she didn't need friends since she had him. She then offered him his daily dose of drool, which he happily accepted. Unbeknownst to them, someone was actually watching them. The following day, Tsubaki and Oino were on cloud 9, since the first subject of the day was PE. But their fantasies were crushed when they were instructed to do judo indoors while the girls had relay races on the tracks. Urabi was accidentally tripped by her classmate, causing her to fall to the ground. She had a nasty gash on her right knee, so Oka, as a member of the health committee, offered to take her to the nurse. When they got there, the nurse was out, so Oka had to treat Yurabi's wounds herself. When she was finished, they shared a drink that Oka kept in the clinic's fridge. Moments later, when Oka